Welcome back to Perkins Pipes. Got the gorgeous little Kaywoodie Bulldog that I love so much. No particular reason other than that I really enjoy this pipe, as viewers of this channel know that I do. I do, however, have my Austin Clothing Company hat on because my son's name is Austin, and in many ways this episode has to do with him. As always, let's get this guy lit. Let's get to talking. So this is another video based on a blog post I had written sometime back. And as before, I'll link to my blog in the notes below. But this one is called Chain Breakers and Legacy Makers. I do not know whether the sound of humans screaming at each other is the same as that of doves crying. In 1984, the musician known as Prince seemed to think so. I do know that it does not accomplish much when we blame others for our lot in life, and that there are better options. And then I quote a bit from the Stoic philosopher Seneca. Errant qui aut boni aliquid nobis aut mali judicant tribuere fortunam. Materiam dat bonorum ac malorum et initia rerum apud nos in malum bonumque exituarum. Valentior enim omni fortuna animus est, et in utramque partem ipse res suus ducet beataeque ac miserae vitae sibi causa est. They make a mistake who judge that fortune gives something either good or bad to us. Fortune gives the raw material of good and bad and the beginnings of things that will come out among us, either good or bad. Stronger than all fortune is the mind, and it itself leads its own affairs in either direction and is the cause of a happy or wretched life for itself. My students and I discussed this passage from one of the letters of the Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca, who lived from 4 BC to 65 AD, in our third-year Latin class. It seems an apt reminder in an age in which blame seems the name of the game, although that does not greatly separate our current age from any other, and it came to mind when a middle-aged friend recently emailed me the following. My sister used to blame everything wrong with her life on our parents, my father especially. I explained to her that Mom and Dad weren't perfect parents, and neither were we, and screaming at him won't solve anything. Our parents have left us with problems to deal with, but our parents weren't able to fix those problems, so they're our problems now. Hopefully we can add a few pieces to the puzzle so our children won't have to deal with the same problems we had to deal with. Also, never forget that while our parents dealt with those problems, they still loved us enough to raise us to the point where we were mature enough to deal with such problems, just as we will do for our children. Our parents are human, with all the human frailties and glorious potential of the next person. We think of them as perfect beings when we are children, which is appropriate for a child's development. But as Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13:11, when I became a man, I put away childish things. Unless they were simply monsters, our parents did the best they could most of the time, although sometimes not reaching the mark of what they could have achieved in their own lives or ours, but again, no one does. And then I continue, and this is the part that connects with my son. When our son was a teen, he and I went away for a few days each fall to Turkey Run State Park in western Indiana. We hiked the trails and talked of what it meant to become a man, and in particular a man of God. As I planned something special for the autumn when he turned 18, I asked him who were some of the men who meant the most to him, and he quickly named 4. I then invited each of them to join us on one evening of our annual trip to share their own thoughts about manhood with my son. One of them spoke to him about those who are chain breakers and those who are legacy makers. Rob explained that some people will be the ones to break the chains of abuse or addiction, or the many other curses that afflict families, and often continue across generations. Others, he said, will be the legacy makers, those who live lives of fullness in Christ and pass on his life and light to their descendants. It is far easier to blame others for the things that are not working well in our lives. Some of those people may indeed be the cause of the worst that we experience, And not blaming them in no way exonerates them. Not blaming them, however, frees people to become the chain breakers and legacy makers that help themselves and others live the lives for which we were made and to which we are called. The choice, of course, is always our own to make. I loved that expression this fellow named Rob, who had been one of my son's teachers, used. Chain breakers versus legacy makers. And maybe you're one or the other, and maybe you've been in the role of both of those. Well, I do think both of those are a matter of choice for us. We can choose to break chains. Chains of generational sin and bad behavior and whatnot. We can also choose to be the legacy makers with our children, with our grandchildren, nieces and nephews and others, and establishing a legacy of goodness and a legacy of life. To the degree that you feel comfortable, what do you think about that? And in any way, have you been a chain breaker? Obviously, we don't want you sharing anything in a comment that you don't feel comfortable sharing, but if you have been a chain breaker and it's really set your family free from something, I'd love to hear about it. If you've been a legacy maker where you have really built into that next generation and helped establish or perhaps carry on the legacy. Maybe there's a legacy that started long before and you've done the things to help carry that on with your family and your children and so forth. Would love to hear those as well. Folks, as Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, Parva ut tandem, nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.